Coming up on 2 years ago, I purchased my favorite camera of all time, the Mamiya 7. But I haven't always been so keen on this legendary rangefinder. In fact, when I first saw this camera on George's channel and saw the associated price range, I honestly didn't quite understand. Additionally, I didn't see the value in rangefinders, so why it would be so inflated was beyond me. Yet over the years, I kept seeing some of the best photos I've ever seen be taken with this Japanese engineering marvel. This compact, quiet, lightweight, medium format camera produces some of the sharpest 6x7 negatives while offering a wide array of lenses, and quite frankly is the cream de la crop when it comes to traveling medium format cameras. Prior to acquiring my Mamiya 7, I had a Mamiya 645 that I traveled to Europe with, and while it wasn't the largest medium format camera, it certainly wasn't the most ideal for lugging around different countries and taking into the Austrian Alps. After arriving home from my 2-week trip that fall, I began the hunt for Mamiya 7, but wouldn't actually acquire it until the beginning of 2020, just in time before COVID. After waiting a couple weeks for it to arrive from Japan, my near-mint Mamiya 7 was finally in my hands. Before really digging into it, after now owning it for about 2 years, I really want to touch base on why I was so allured to this camera from the jump and what specific things made it most ideal for me from the outside looking in. Like I said about my trip, most of my photography is lifestyle or landscape based, so the ability to capture easily while moving and ideally without needing a tripod was a huge must for me. Additionally, I wanted something compact and that I could carry with me for a 10-mile hike up a mountain and not feel so fatigued that I consider leaving it at summit. Mamiya RB67. In addition to the more subjective qualities, there were quite a few objective features that really solidified the camera for me. Breaking down the Mamiya 7 really proves how simple and masterfully designed the camera is. With the shutter speed dial on top and aperture on the lens, the camera really allows you to concentrate on your compositions while still maintaining all the control of your settings. It also has a light meter too, which is nice as you don't have to carry an external meter as well. I like to think of the camera as a minimalist. It has all the everyday necessities without bogging down everything with extra filler. I think this says a lot about the workflow of the camera too. Instead of worrying about silly, for the most part useless bells and whistles, the Mamiya 7 offers a rudimentary shooting experience on 6x7 medium format with world-class leaf shutter lenses. Leaf shutter means the shutter is in the lens and is incredibly quiet because of it. From a 43mm up to a 210mm with 4 lenses at varying lengths in between, the camera offers a lens for pretty much any type of shooting. But be aware that you will need a different viewfinder for the lenses on either end of the spectrum, which can make shooting obviously much more obtuse. With that being said, I've only shot the 65mm, but have captured the majority of my best photos with this setup. Before I touch on price and if it's worth it, I think it's worth noting the comparison to the Mamiya 7 II. The Mamiya 7 II's few differences compared to its predecessors are in its multiple exposure capability, a better lens changing curtain mechanism, and a quote, sleeker design, but personally, I think I almost like the design of the original camera more. So if you're asking myself, the marginal upgrades that I personally won't pay the extra $700 to $1,100 for are certainly not worth it, and you'd be better off with an original Mamiya 7 and loads of film. That brings me on to the price and ultimately who this camera is actually worthwhile for. First off, before we even mention price, if you're using a film camera to take photos to post solely for Instagram, this camera is probably not worth it. If you're scanning all your 6x7 film on an Epson V600, again, it's probably not worth it. In my opinion, the Mamiya 7 is a perfect camera for a professional, established, traveling photographer focusing almost entirely on landscapes, who has the infrastructure to properly and professionally scan these images with the idea of producing prints. I know that's kind of a mouthful and kind of niche, but I think it would take that type of person to really bring out the full potential and justify the $2,000 to $3,000 it takes to buy this. With that being said, if you're lusting over the camera and are looking to invest in your skill, I would have a tough time saying no, but would warn how depending on your previous camera, without the professional scans, you may not notice a huge difference. But when scanned on a Noritsu or drum scanner or something of the like, I've never seen any better 6x7 negatives from any other camera. The only other glass that compares is the Hasselblad's collection of Zeiss lenses. So all in all, where do I stand? If you can swing it, I think the Mamiya 7 single-handedly improved my photos more than any other camera I've ever used, whether it be digital, 35mm, medium format. When I acquired this camera and shot it specifically as my main camera, the quality of shots and because of the workflow of the camera, compositionally improved so much more than any other camera I've ever used in my life. Which I think a lot could be attributed to user input, but I think there is some merit to be said about the Mamiya 7. Now, I don't really think it's worth breaking the bank for, or like selling your vehicle to get one or anything, because I think at the end of the day, whatever camera you currently own can take just as impressive as photos, albeit maybe not as sharp or as large, but there's nothing you can't do on a different camera that the Mamiya 7 can do. Because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily all about the gear, but how you use it.